It's the Worth Knowing live stream on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube, on my very own Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson. We're on Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn, wherever you're coming to us from. We are just glad to be together on a beautiful summer day, which kind of begs the question, where is here anyway? And if you're listening to this later on audio podcast, that sounds like an existential question. But for those of us together here on video, you can see that I'm in a very different place than usual. I'm coming to you live from the beach house basement. That's right. For 45 years, my wife's family has rented the same kind of busted beach house on the Jersey Shore. And for me, it's my annual opportunity to visit a sweat lodge and hallucinate, basically. But my kids absolutely love it. My family loves it. The only time I've missed it was the summer of 2010 when I was the chief of staff for a member of Congress who was locked in a Senate race at the time. And it felt like maybe not the best time to disappear to the beach. But this year, my only set aside this week is just this 1 hour for the live stream where I get to hang out with all of you because it feels like a vacation in itself to me. It's a little time away with my online friends to talk about some stuff that's worth knowing. And speaking of taking a little time off from your senses, we want to start off today. My brilliant guest and I, he's lurking backstage right now. He's all excited to jump on with us. We want to start off with a theme of taking leave of your senses. It's really the question of what happens when prophecies fail? What happens to the cult? In the past week or so, this has been the big question that's been hanging over American politics. There's been a tremendous amount of analysis about the crack in the cult of MAGA over the issue of the Epstein files. And as most people who even casually follow the news probably know by now, Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy financier who for years committed multiple counts of sexual abuse of young girls and who also had close ties to many powerful political figures, including President Donald Trump. Since Epstein's crimes came to light, many on the MAGA right have alleged a massive government cover-up from the left to protect Epstein, despite the fact that Trump himself was tied to Epstein and even seemed to indicate in public quotes that he was well aware that Epstein had an interest in, quote, girls who were on the younger side. To them, the Epstein case was just a piece of the larger puzzle they had constructed in their own minds of a deep state conspiracy. You can see the overlap with a QAnon conspiracy, which is based on a belief that powerful Democrats were involved in child sexual abuse, and indeed that the entire government is constantly at work to create elaborate false realities for their own ends. You can see the overlap with the beliefs of right-wing activist and online influencer Laura Loomer, who is one of the primary movers behind the alleging of an Epstein cover-up, and who also believes that, quote, 9/11 was an inside job. Marjorie Taylor Greene, another online Epstein crusader, has famously alleged that shadowy Jewish forces control the weather through space lasers. Speaking of which, you can hear the echoes there to the most ancient of all conspiracy theories in Marjorie Taylor Greene and QAnon and the Epstein conspiracy. I'm sure you've spotted it. It's the blood libel. It's the accusation that Jews use the blood of non-Jewish children to make matzah. It all comes back to a recurring, overlapping fantasy about powerful forces, wealthy Jews, and the abuse of children. So you can see how for a certain segment of the online right, a story that involves real abuse of children by a real wealthy, powerful, and Jewish man was highly provocative. And you can see how all of these conspiracy theories overlap in a sick Venn diagram, or if you prefer 3D metaphors, nested inside each other like a Russian Matryoshka doll. Speaking of Russian nesting dolls, that's been a really useful aspect of this for Donald Trump, because he's tried to leverage his followers' conspiracy mindset to fight back against real and actual conspiracies like Russian interference in the 2016 election and their broader support for the Republican Party. One of the things that's always stuck in my craw about the media and their treatment of the Mueller report is that they both so easily allowed Trump to get away with saying, see, there was no collusion with Russia. That's not what was alleged there. The legal term for what was alleged is conspiracy, not collusion. And there was definitely a conspiracy on the part of the Russians. That much was proven by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee. The question was always whether the Trump campaign was in on the conspiracy. And by the way, they clearly were. Trump's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was meeting with Russian intelligence operatives and handing over internal polling. That was one of hundreds of other connections. But the point is, Trump is all for these conspiracy theories. They're great for him. The conspiracy cultists form a ready core of dedicated followers who will buy into his birther lie, and then who he can throw winks and nods to for the QAnon crowd, and he can then get riled up over the Epstein files, the collection of information that the FBI theoretically has on Epstein. And then, when he's got problems, he can go right back to his crowd and say, everything that was just alleged about me is just another hoax. It's another deep state conspiracy. It's inside that Matryoshka Russian nesting doll. All of which is why, for years, as figures like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel have been railing online about the need to release the Department of Justice's Epstein files, Trump has been happy to let them run along. It was to his advantage to let them prophesize how much incriminating dirt on his enemies would exist inside those files. It was all part of the plan to let Patel and Bongino and even J.D. Vance speak publicly about a so-called client list of Epstein being kept secret by the government. So what happens when prophecies fail? Because that's what Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi tried to manifest when she declared that there was no further information to be released in the case. And in fact, that the case was closed. Even after teasing for months that there was indeed another shoe to drop, she even told Fox News on air, live, that the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review. Now, Trump did himself no favors by trying to come to Bondi's defense over the weekend in a long Truth Social explosion, in which he went right to his go-to move to try to follow up on Bondi's claim that there was no list by saying, well, maybe there is a list, but that's another hoax. It's another part of the big conspiracy. So just to keep this all straight, the conspiracy is real, but it's over, and there's nothing more to know, and anything that you've been thinking is part of the conspiracy was actually invented by the conspiracy. It's so utterly confusing, such a mixture of truth and concoction and like convenient arrangement. It's like that moment from the movie Megamind.
There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no Queen of England.
And of course, no one on the MAGA right is buying this. That's what causes an open rebellion, as Politico put it. So what happens to the cult when prophecies fail? To get into this and much more, including rescissions and nervous Republicans sweating Senate races in 2026, attacks on his home state of Minnesota, and everything else going on today, we have a true star of Midwest radio, Matt McNeel, a longtime contributor to the Cliff's Edge channel, a friend of this show. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
It's always awesome to do another session of Matt and Matt. It's like I'm looking in freaky deaky Midwest mirror with you. Always delightful. All right, man. I mean, how is this playing in the heartland? I am an avowed East Coaster. I'm part of the liberal latte sipping, kale eating elite, I guess. I don't know. I'm a New England person. So how is all of this playing in the heartland where you are? All of this MAGA crack up. Is it real?
Well, I will say it like this. I don't know if this is necessarily something different for you or me, because this is just his delusional base wanting desperately this to be true. And as you quite nicely laid out, this is trying to follow this little stream of thread of thought process is a nightmare, because, okay, if it was all, now he's saying the report he said was not existent, was existent, and now is made up. But then why didn't they use it against you in these presidential elections? Oh, that's right. It is. Okay, the problem that Trump has is, as you pointed out, great. Elon Musk ended his little charade when Elon Musk said Donald Trump's on the Epstein list. And the second he did that, all of a sudden, this whole little dog and pony show where they basically kept saying, which Democrat, is George Clooney on the list? All this stuff. All of a sudden, it was toxic. And they basically, it was time to, as Midwesterners will say, fish or cut bait. And they all of a sudden they decided to, let's go back to cutting bait. We're not going to release the report. And they've tried this. It is, you've basically built this up to impossible standards, and now you're trying to walk it back. I mean, it's like the Fry Festival, it's like, you're gonna go out there, it's gonna be this wonderful experience, and all of a sudden it's bologna on a paper plate and no water, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? And I just think that there are a lot of Republicans who banked on, and MAGA particularly, who banked on Trump because they felt as if, Trump is bad, but these people are so much worse. And now they're kind of getting the slap to the face, like, no, he's the top of the list. He is the top of the list. He's, public enemy number one on Epstein's list. He was on Jeffrey Epstein's child sex plane to his child sex island 7 times. 5 of those times, I believe it was 5 of those times, with underage girls on the plane with him. He's the guilty party. I mean, and I think that's what it is. It regardless of where you're at in this country, if you're MAGA, you just had so much built up on the reality that you were always right, and now you're facing the reality.
I gotta say, you do this every day. You're live every freaking day, and you get the charge that comes from doing like the real world as it's happening. And so we've got the Cynthia Rice, one of the true rock stars of the chat family here, giving us I'm at 8 minutes behind here in the comments, so I'm probably going to catch up to reality slowly, like informing all of us that not only are Republicans in the House voting right now on the release of the Epstein files, but it's looking like they're going to vote against. And so here's
if I can give you an update on that,
give me an update.
The Rules Committee did actually vote to not release the files, which I find to be hilarious, because one of the members of the Rules Committee is Representative Michelle Fischbach, who is in the Minnesota 7th District. And this is the same woman that, when it was a transgender issue, is, we're here to protect girls. And now it's, screw the girls. We don't want to know what's going on. And so the hypocrisy, because we have to remember that 3 months ago, every one of these people is, we're just here to protect young girls. Well, if they're 14 and older, we're asking for it. Now it's just this bizarro kind of attempt to kind of, exactly, just don't ignore it.
The most used.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite incredible. And this is like an inversion of the Nancy Pelosi line that got much lampooned. You have to vote for the health care bill in order to find out what's in it. Now we have to vote against releasing the Epstein files so we can not find out what's in them, because it was written by Democrats. The whole conspiracy is real. Just keep up your anger about the conspiracy. Just don't look over there, because anything that is part of the conspiracy isn't real. So if it all isn't real and it was all concocted by Democrats, what's the problem with? I'm literally like, I'm running into like one of these logic. This is a bit like watching the movie Inception. It's a little bit like, see, you've got the dream layer, then you've got the other dream layer, but maybe we weren't in the mind of the proper dreamer. It's absolutely stunning. Is this? Let me ask you this: like, you're covering these things daily.
The bottom layer of that Inception layer, apparently Donald Trump thinks he's won the FIFA World Cup. So I mean, it says, I'm deep enough into the Inception, and he won it by himself. So that's how it goes.
I really, I'm beginning to sort of, I don't know, like, let's put a finer point on this for a second, because there's nothing like seeing it come together. And look, I want to start with sort of my null hypothesis here, which is, and this isn't to step on my own premise for the show, because obviously this is all super interesting to talk about, but I'd like to give a little bit of a prophecy myself, which is, I don't think this is going to lead to a MAGA crack up. And I don't want to like yuck everybody's yum here, but this is a well-studied phenomenon in social psychology. And I've talked about this before. It's one of my favorite social science studies of all time. Leon Festinger, he wrote a book on it called When Prophecies Fail. And he actually invented the term cognitive dissonance. He was studying right in your stamping grounds there, McNeel, a Chicago-based cult that believed that the world was going to end in a flood. Their cult leader had prophesized that the world was going to end, and a UFO was going to come and rescue them. And Festinger embedded his team in the cult and followed them, and they were all real sure this was going to happen. And then the prophecy failed. Doomsday came and went, no flood. And you'd expect people to get disillusioned. But the opposite happened. They doubled down. The people who were most devoted to the cult became even more devoted to the cult. And, you've kind of seen this. It's true. There are some people who have kind of drifted away from the whole QAnon thing from its peak, but there's still a core of people, even after the person who was dropping those Q notes or whatever the hell they called them, kind of admitted, like, yeah, hey guys, this ain't on. This ain't happening. Like, there are still people out there who are part of this, who are caught up in this. And I just think that there is a core of true believers. And the question really becomes, even is if that remains the case, is it enough to cause a schism here that will actually hurt the Republican Party? Are they going to be hoisted on their own petard? As I said in the beginning, Trump has been strategically and cynically leveraging this insane conspiracy bullshit for his own advantage for over a decade now. So is this finally going to bite him, or is he going to lose people permanently? I tend to think not. What do you think?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it comes down to this, is that when you look at guys like Trump and despots who are out there with that have been coalesced into this unbelievable voting bloc that he was able to congeal and turn into MAGA. I mean, these were, for lack of a better way to say it, the losers. The 5, the 10, the 16-time losers, the guys that keep getting fired from jobs because of their incompetence, that couldn't make their own life work, or can't get out of their own damn way to help themselves, are full of resentment. And Donald Trump came on the scene, and when he did, what was the first thing he said to those people? You're not the loser, they're the loser. And they absorbed that. That is the manna from heaven that even though I'm clearly a loser, I'm not the loser, they're the loser. And that is MAGA. MAGA is this bizarre attempt to have to avoid facing reality. And, strong people will look in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm screwing up. I need to fix myself. Not them. They don't want to do it. And you're right, because this does get to this whole thing with the Epstein list. It gets to the base core. It's that whole thing is, well, Trump's not the best, but he's not all the guys on the Epstein list. And everything that Trump is saying now basically is an admission that he's on the Epstein list. That's the deal. That's where he's at. That's just it. And I think there's going to come this, come to Jesus moment, for lack of a better way to say it, but it come to Jesus moment. They're going to have to say, do I walk away from this and basically realize that, yeah, he's the pedophile, the calls coming from within the own house, that's the guy? Or do I basically just sort of say, like you've already seen some MAGA guys out there saying, well, first of all, was this pedophilia? I mean, these were 14-year-old girls. They were kind of asking for it. And you're like, oh my God, they are clearly trying to, because they can't lose if they lose that bubble, then they have to acknowledge, I was wrong. And you take a look at it in just who MAGA is today, they can basically screw up on things. And as opposed to say, oh, gee willikers, we were wrong, or say thank you when, someone on the left helps them, they just can't do that. They've built this entire mantra, this entire narrative that they're the heroes of their own story, but they're basically losers. And so at the end of the day, if it comes push to shove, they'll accept him as the pedophile in chief. They'll accept him as that, because down deep inside, they would rather accept that than the fact that they themselves are still the losers they were when he came on the scene.
It is incredible. I come back to this over and over again. Speaking of prophecy, what a prophetic genius George Orwell was. The whole construct of 1984 and the idea that it's quintessential to the regime to be able to go through these machinations to say, well, now we're at war with East Asia. We've always been at war with East Asia. We are going to retcon the truth relentlessly. That's what Winston's job is, the protagonist in 1984. We are going to make this true. We're going to drum this in. We're going to make you say it over and over again. We're going to make you stand up. And now you have to vote the party line. No, we will not release the Epstein files. Why? Because we've always been at war with East Asia. And it's part of the process. I mean, there's something so intrinsically fascist about the thinking there. And it's deeply disturbing. But I think you're right. I think it's almost part of the exercise. It's almost part of the setup for Trump here to make people walk this plank over and over again. This is why Tom Tillis just resigned, because he was being asked to walk a fantasy plank, the senator from North Carolina, with the bill that I won't say the stupid name of, the Republican budget bill. He had to come out and basically say, this is great. I love this. I don't care about the 600,000 people in my own state that I'm going to kick off Medicaid. I'm not kicking them off Medicaid. These are work requirements for lazy layabouts who do nothing. And he hit his line. I mean, it really is incredible. And it seems like over and over again, this is what Trump's entire psychology is all about. It's all about making people walk up to that line and then step over it. You've got to walk straight down that plank and into his ocean, and you have to do it over and over again in a debasing way, in a humiliating way, in order to essentially give him that feeling of dominance that he needs.
It's the Biff Tannon effect. I mean,
Yes.
and it really is. I mean, it's the Biff Tannon from the Back to the Future effect. You've got this guy who basically his entire world is that he's the hero, and the amount of people that cave to that. And if anyone starts saying, do we really want to do this? Then it becomes this loyalty pledge. And I can tell you from people I know that work within some of these Republican offices, if you basically even just sort of said, I'm not sure if I want to pass this bill, your office is about to be inundated with MAGA threatening to kill you, kill your kids, kill your dog, burn your house down. How dare you turn it? He has successfully recruited his group of thugs to go around and threaten anyone he needs to into submission. And so the only option they have is to resign. And not just Tillis, but was it Bacon out in Nebraska, the House member out there. And now you've got Jody Ernst, who's apparently on the verge of a nervous breakdown in Iowa. And so they basically they can retire, announce their retirement, and then all of a sudden they can actually speak the truth. And that all of a sudden that threat's not there. But as long as they want to be within the Biff Tannen fold of Trump, they basically, if they're not willing to bow down to his words, that they will destroy them any way they can. Which is kind of interesting to watch this whole thing with Elon, because I think Trump does realize, or Bogino, the deputy FBI chair, he does realize if he does push some of these people away, they do have some ability from outside the bubble to cause him some damage. The last thing he wants right now is, basically free agent MAGA guys out there screaming how Trump is no better than the Democrats, or Elon Musk to take Twitter. And I don't know what it is when he's got Mecha Hitler on there. I don't know where he's going to go with it, but it basically turned it into something where it's attacking him on a regular basis, and he's not prepared for that. I think that there is some concern about keeping those people in the fold without basically burning them. But it comes at a cost. And once you get ostracized from the Trump world, you basically they consider you worse in my mind than the Democrat, because you're basically a traitor in their eyes. That's
exactly where I want to go with this. And you invoke Jody Ernst, which some people are picking up on in the chats. And so let's go there. I just want to make, I want to at least acknowledge the fine work of Mark Gauci here in the chats. Just, pointing out the incredible hypocrisy, Republicans essentially becoming the pedophile party. Now, I understand, Mark understands, we all know that there are some issues with releasing these files. There's work to be done here. There's redactions that need to happen. There are names of victims. There's sensitive information. Understood. but that's all accomplishable. That's all doable at a fundamental level.
They've had the list for a while. They've had the list for a while. You could have been working on this. I mean, Pam Bondi had it on her desk about 4 months ago, so she wasn't working, I guess.
Absolutely. And and here's Mark teeing it up again. Absolutely right. And I mean, this is absolutely doable. And it does. Sometimes it comes down to this, and it seems like this just became another instance of Trump basically saying, I say there are 5 lights. You say there are 4. And
nice Next Generation reference there. Nicely done. But you're exactly
which was
right.
itself borrowed from Orwell, the purveyor of all geniusness. Exactly. There are 5 lights. You must say it. Say it now, or you're a traitor, or you're out. You know who heard this 6 months ago? Jody frickin' Ernst, when it was time for Pete Hegseth's nomination. And she was like, yeah, I don't know. This guy seems to have a problem with being abusive toward women. And he seems to have a problem with being totally freaking unqualified, having bankrupted 2 nonprofits. He also seems to have a problem, bless the heart of anyone who's struggling with substance abuse. I'm not casting shade at them, but he has an ongoing active substance abuse problem. Maybe not the person who we want in charge of our nuclear arsenal. All legitimate issues. What happened? 1 weekend of tough ads in her district saying, you better shut up, lady, or you're done. We're coming for you. And look who folded faster than Supergirl on Laundry Day. Jody Ernst. Profiles encourage Jody Ernst. And now, as you mentioned, she is making noises, apparently, that she might be done. She might be, like Tom Tillis, tired of embracing the fantasy. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. I'm not going to bleat this stuff out anymore. I am done. I have put up with enough of this. And that is raising some concern among Republicans that could put a winnable seat for Democrats on the board. In addition, there's the whole blow up with Ken Paxton that happened over the weekend. Look, I don't want to tap dance on. Look, the end of someone's marriage after 38 years is very sad. I'm not trying to exploit a human tragedy with that. But on the other hand, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. All of this is causing angst. What are you picking up about Senate Republican angst and their ability to hold on in 2026?
Well, first of all, I think we all have to ask the question. Another woman thought Ken Paxton was attractive? Okay. I know. It's like, wow. I mean, talk about science fiction.
Here I am trying to pull my punches, and the other white man is like, no. That's
but I'm serious. I'm like, I'm not the best looker, but I mean, Matt here is, and we have a lineup of guys here. I mean, it is.
We're all named Matt, and
exactly. I've been to Texas. There's some handsome fellows down there. You really couldn't. Okay, whatever. All right, fine. Some people like pickled herring. Anyway, so I think what you've got is this. Well, okay, let's pull back and look at the whole board come this next election. They're going to be having fits. I just saw it today. Gosh, I can't find out off the top of my head. The Medicaid, it was cost Medicaid rises that were put forward that were, this just happened. Okay, so received the proposed increase from my Medicare supplement plan for 2026. It's almost $100 more per month, a 17.9 increase. That's $1,200 a year for someone like me who on a fixed income. That is, okay, that's out there, and that is happening. They try the best to push as much of this down the line past 2028. Hopefully they can get a few re-election cycles in there, and then they can blame Democrats for the Trump bill. But the reality is it's already starting to hit. Inflation numbers are already up. I mean, we're already seeing this. You've got rotting crops in the field. I was disturbed to see the number of photos from California where a third of our vegetables comes from California. 3/4 of our fruit comes from California. 3/4 of the nuts come from California. And there's rotting food in the field because there's no one there to pick it. I mean, that is going to be immediate impact. And I think a lot of these Republicans are realizing, do I really want to go back there and really try to sell this crap sandwich to my constituents when I already know that a lot of constituents are going to come to me and not say, I heard Medicaid is going up, but they're going to say, here's my Medicaid bill. You did this. And I mean, my farm lost its grants, and now I can't find people to work it. And so I'm losing my farm. You did this. And they have to show up in public at some point where they're not just being asked softball questions by a Fox News OAN type of person. And I think they're all looking at this. You're going to see a massive amount of Republicans resign. Mark my word, if the Democrats stop trying to pander and be Republican light and actually find their base core of their populist issues, which resonates with most American people, they'll get out there and they'll start making inroads, and they could actually pick up a lot of seats that are nowhere on the radar right now. And this is going to hurt a lot of people. I mean, the education department stuff, the Title IX stuff, the disabled, the education funds for disabled kids and stuff, that's all going to end. And, you know, in every rural country and every rural school district in this country I'm going to guess 60% of them are going to go under because they're just not going to have the money. Once you go to this state issue, they're not going to have the money to keep their schools open. So now your local kid's school is going to be an hour away, one direction. And you can look at, once again, Joni Ernst has to go into Iowa, has to have that constituent look at her in the face saying, I have to drive my kids an hour to school thanks to you. I think that a lot of these guys right now, it's a good time to sit back, they're working on their resumes, trying to find out where they can get that lobbying gig. And come really, I'm going to guess November, December this year, you are going to see a announcement of retirement from Republicans start to trickle in, which is going to be unbelievable. And including states which right now are not on the radar for the Democrats, but are definitely going to be on the radar for the Democrats because they've just screwed up so badly.
I'm so glad you brought up this point, because this is really one of the early bellwethers that you can look at is which party starts to see a wave of retirements. Usually in the House, you look at the House as your leading indicator because that's where the opportunity is. I mean, look, I work for 3 different members of the House on the Democratic side, obviously. And, you know, I've seen wave after wave of this. It happens at the staff level too, by the way. People are great. It's like, you know, going to a market, a futures market to bet on a proposition. There's a kind of a wisdom of crowds effect that happens here where people start to read the tea leaves and they start to say exactly what you just said. Gosh darn it. If you're a Republican right now, you can cash the F in. The top lobbying firms, this just came out in Politico, made something on the order of $123 million in the first 6 months of this year. It's all based on Trump access. It's all international, by the way. These are international clients who are coming in looking for just a moment to influence the Trump administration, usually by getting some piece of flattery in front of the man himself. And there is huge money, much more money to be made on K Street than there is as a staffer or as a member of Congress. And you start to look at that, and you look at that as the comparison to your life right now. What is your life if you are a member of the House of Representatives right now and you're a Republican? Well, look, if you're in a safe MAGA seat, it's not that bad. You just sit there, you put forward bills, you bow down, you put forward bills to put Trump's face on Mount Rushmore. It's a pretty easy gig, but you could be doing better. But what if you're in a seat that you actually have to defend, or that in a wave year would start to look vulnerable? Well, now you're spending about 5 hours a day in call time. For those out there who don't know what call time is, that's where you sit in a space that's about the size of the room Matt is in and has the cinder block motif of the room that I'm in.
This is a nice room.
It's a lovely room. It's just not gigantic. I'm in a relative palace here in the beachfront basement. By the way, for people wondering, yes, I'm coming to you from my family's beach vacation week. And for me, the priority is family first, but for 1 hour, it's live stream family first. See how that works? Live stream family. That's why I'm here. So that's what's on offer. 5 hours a day in a windowless cubicle, calling up everyone you've ever met and asking them for thousands of dollars. It's awful. I have done this as a chief of staff. One of the nicest things you can do, one of the parts of the job for your boss, is to do some call time for them, to call the associations, to call the labor unions. I've spent hours in those windowless cubicles making phone calls to people that I've met at cocktail parties and other basements like Tortilla Coast, the Mexican restaurant on the corner right down from the staff buildings on the House, and I meet these people, and then I call them a few hours later. Can you give my boss $5,000 right now? And you do this hour after hour after hour, and you get fustigated in the press, and you get hammered on air in front of all your friends and family by your Democratic opponent, and it sucks. And the thank you get for all of this is you have to walk the plank and become the party of pedophiles for Donald Trump, for the dear leader. This is what you do, rinse and repeat over and over again. And so if you start to see a wave of retirements in about 3 to 5 months, that is a great sign that Republicans are reading the tea leaves and are getting darn nervous. And the reason that I've left this comment up on here, another brilliant one from Mark Gauci, is that what I think you're seeing with Tom Tillis, with Joni Ernst, with Republicans that are having to face the music here is a recognition that they're going to have to run on this budget bill and on the economy. Because the White House has signaled, this was in Politico Monday, the White House has signaled that they're done legislating. They're going to try to pass this rescissions bill this week. They're pretty much done legislating until the midterms. So they're going to run on this budget bill. And they're hoping that the economy will be strong enough that they can run on it. And right now, you see inflationary pressures building, and you see trade and tariffs not going well at all. And you see, as you just said, Republicans like Joni Ernst are looking out and saying, gosh, I've got to run on this disaster in education, on this disaster in grocery prices, on the disaster of energy prices, an average increase in electricity bills of $400 a year for the average American family, because we just killed incentives for renewable energy for no freaking reason whatsoever. And look, I want to be realistic about this. I'm not trying to feed people hopium. Okay. There's not as of now a great chance of Democrats retaking the Senate, but you can see why Republicans are sitting there and they look at the Ken Paxton situation versus Greg Abbott, and they look at Joni Ernst, and they look at Tom Tillis, and they look at Susan Collins, and they start to say, this is not necessarily shaping up well.
No. And by the way, it's Cornyn that he's running against. I believe he's running against Cornyn down in Texas.
Cornyn, yes.
So two things, if I may. First of all, and Mark, solid point here, because the economy is broken. The Trump administration broke the economy. They broke the bond market, currency market, ag market, housing market, all in 10 hours when they put all those tariffs into place. And if they hadn't scrambled back to pull those back immediately, that they would have crashed this country right then. And they didn't, but they put cracks in the system. There is clearly a bubble that's going on right now. The inflation numbers came out today, and there's clearly money being directed from crypto markets in to keep buying this stuff to try to keep this up. This is not going to last. I would recommend to people, if you can, pay off some of your debt if you can, because this is going to get bad, and it's going to be really bad. Now, as far as reelection, you and I talked about something just really quick before I came on the air. If I may go on a little bit of a story here.
Please do.
In Minnesota, you've got the House reps and the state party and the federal government coming in and attacking Democrats and coming in here and we're going to stop this, all this sort of thing. I mean, outside of their anti-transgender hate, there's not a lot of unity with the state reps here and the federal reps for the Republican Party. And I'm going to guess what you're seeing here is what you're seeing in a lot of other places. There hasn't been a lot of local Republicans, state Republicans, who have there's always one or two who trumpet the federal government, trumpet the U.S. House reps that are here in the state of Minnesota for the Republicans. They trumpet their agenda. They trumpet what they're trying to do. And I'm not hearing anything. And as a matter of fact, I want to tell you about the Minnesota state flag. We remodeled the Minnesota state flag. The old flag was a racist flag. It was modeled after Manifest Destiny, the idea of running Native Americans off their land. And the fact that it took us so long to fix the damn thing is a travesty. They put together a bipartisan commission made up of people from the metro area, from the rural areas, right-wing Republicans, far-left Democrats. They came up with a new flag. It is a very cool flag. It is somewhat reminiscent of this hat, okay? It's very cool. It's a very simplistic thing. We no longer look like the 18 states that just have a blue background with a seal on it on a flag. It's nice. The Republicans in the state of Minnesota are frantically trying to turn this flag into the woke flag, the angry flag. It's a Somali flag. It's the flag. They forced this flag on it. This was just a bunch of liberals. And it's the stupidest damn thing I've ever seen. There has been, and I want to call out the Twin Cities news media as well. They have basically sat there and published Republican talking points on this, because they'll come out and say, well, outside of the Twin Cities metro core, nobody's flying the flag. This last weekend on Saturday, my wife and I took a 3-hour drive. We drove out to a western part of Minnesota to the Pipestone National Monument, which is a very interesting place, sacred to Native Americans, and it has a very interesting geological stone called Pipestone there, which is they make their pipes with. And we went there, and then I went to a state park called Blue Mountain State Park. It's a gorgeous state park. I drove through tons of rural Minnesota, out in the country, and I saw the new flag, not just on libraries or government buildings. I saw it on people's houses. This is just something that they are trying to do to create an issue that they hope they can somehow run against, because anything that's coming from the federal government right now is as toxic as hell. And so they don't want to be the ones out there talking about to the farmers they represent, who need the undocumented workers, about how great it is we're rounding up the undocumented workers. They don't want to have to go to their rural districts and say, you remember that hospital we used to have? Well, it's gone because they just lost all their Medicaid funding. They don't want to have to go to these people. They see they're at ground zero for the impact of this Trump administration, and they can't back it up. And they know that if they do, they're in trouble. So what you're seeing is this real, for the first time I've ever seen it in politics, this real declination of the federal Republicans, the national Republicans. They're doing their thing, but the state Republicans, they're kind of trying to build their own little, hermetically sealed dome and have their own little issue here and say, we don't really want to talk about federal issues, which is pretty remarkable. But I don't think that Minnesota is unique to this. I think that this is something that you're seeing in every state. You're in New Jersey right now, New Hampshire. You're going to go to all California. You're going to see a lot of Republicans. I guarantee you in California, in the valleys, those Republicans that represent that area are desperate to not have to talk about this, or trying to find some way to not make Trump mad and back it up. There is this real, this is the federal government forcing this on them, and they can't speak out against it. So they have to try to they're keeping their mouths shut about these things. They're trying not to say, oh, I'm not with them. And they're trying to create these fake issues like the flag hurt me. And that is kind of where they're at. It is going to be very interesting to watch how this goes over the next few months, because it might be not be that MAGA divide that you and I first talked about with the Epstein files, but it's going to be very hard for these guys in rural America to go out there and say, yeah, even though we definitively have hurt you, you need to vote for me again. And it's going to be an interesting argument.
I completely agree. And I'm glad that you're bringing up a good story because I'm glad you're bringing up the impact in the states. And it's one of the things that I think you bring, even though you're syndicated here, I should pop up your info once again. I mean, you're syndicated all over the place, but the fact that you're coming out of the Midwest and you're constantly reminding us, hey, we don't have to get overly obsessed as Democrats, which we do, on what's going on in Washington and the federal view and the federal races. This all hits at the state level. And the other place that it's going to continue to hit is the hospitals closing down. And what you're going to see is, there's the old saw in politics. If you're defending, you're losing. Republicans are going to have to play a lot of defense. That's the thing. And when you hear Chuck Schumer coming out, in reaction, of course, reporters stuck microphones in his face about the Jody Ernst thing and the Ken Paxton thing and, kind of the growing concerns for Republicans, because they're trying to create a story here because, the Senate's not that much on the line. He's like, oh, no, I think prospects have, improved remarkably. And but the one thing he said that really rung true and is, I think, important here is, because Trump is not going to try to legislate more, they're basically going to run on whatever the economy does and this Republican budget bill. That means Republicans aren't adding more ammunition for their campaigns. They're running on the Medicaid cuts. They're running on the SNAP cuts. They're running on the inflation. They're running on the higher electricity bills. They have to defend all of that. And look, if I'm if I were a Republican political consultant, I'm happy to bring one on. Hey, folks in the chats, I've been a little reluctant. Like, I have Republicans that I bring on and I talk to as guests who are super interesting. They're not like, Trumpists. They bring me insights that I don't know. If you want to have some Republicans on here, I can do that. I mean, I leave it up to you in the chats. But, if I were a Republican political consultant, I'm not thrilled with the cards that I have to play here. I'm not thrilled with having to defend at the state level the Medicaid cuts that are going to shut down the hospitals. I'm not thrilled with having to deal with what can Democrats do. I was just on a chat, by the way. If you subscribe to me here, I should pop up. I'm going to do a moment of my own self-promotion here. So if you subscribe to my Substack, worthknowing.substack.com, which I hope everyone has, you get these chats with me. And I was going back and forth with someone in the chat, literally from the beach this morning. I'm sitting in a beach chair, looking out at the waves. My kids are body surfing. And, I look down, I'm like, oh, look, I'm distracted by my phone. I'm a 21st century person. And I got into a chat with someone who was saying, like, how do we hold Republicans accountable for, for example, what RFK Jr. is doing to take away kids' vaccines? And I was like, well, we could take a page out of our own playbook from 2004 when we were holding George W. Bush accountable for his Social Security privatization push. And what did we do? We put seniors on buses. We brought them to the Capitol. Instead of another boring press conference with politicians standing up, we put some real people in front of the cameras to say, this is what will happen to me and my Social Security if Bush's plan goes through. Well, what about running the same damn thing on your kids' vaccines, on Medicaid, on food aid? Most of the people getting SNAP benefits are working. So, like, you're working a job, you're playing by the rules, you're getting some help with your health care and with your food, and you're trying to feed your kids. And along comes Trump and the Republicans, and they say, no, not good enough for us. Do another 10 hours of paperwork to prove that you're working. Mm-hmm. And, that is an opportunity for Democrats to play offense and Republicans to play defense. That was a massive, massive rant. It was just all by way of saying that I think the perspective you're bringing about how this is hitting in the states and how difficult it is for Republicans to explain, that's why you're seeing this wave of concern on the part of Republican strategists.
Well, and I think to back you up is what was talked about earlier. Let's go back to the Republicans who are going to be retiring, because it's one thing when we are smart enough and we do these buses and we get things out there, but we're not going to have to do that. They're going to be able to they're not going to be able to, when Joni Ernst goes to Waterloo or goes to Cedar Rapids or goes to Des Moines and is trying to do out there and do a photo op, and is confronted about, here is my disabled child. You literally took them out of their wheelchair and we had to sell our house so we could get them basic coverage. That, that's the thing, this is why I think there's a lot of Republicans who are going to have some real tough months coming ahead, is that it's one thing when you go from your gilded mansion to your country club and you can ignore the masses. But if you're going to campaign, you've got to get out there. And I think this is what's going to lead to that, is that the people themselves are going to do that. And like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think the Democrats should do more of that stuff. But I think that's the real wall that they're going to run into, is that, wait a second, were we supposed to have gas prices were supposed to be free and eggs were supposed to be a dime a dozen at this point? None of this is coming true. And none of these people, it's very hard for them to say, oh, we didn't decrease Medicaid, we increased funding for it. Then why is someone holds up a bill in their face and saying, then why is my bill at $1,200 more a year? And they don't have an answer for that. Right. And so, this is that plank that's going to hit them hard in the face.
All right. Well, two comments. First of all, I just have to splash up a comment from one of my favorite commenters, Amethyst Peony, to tell you, Dr. Peony, that I was playing Bananagrams with my daughter, who's 14. She kicks my ass regularly. It's actually, I love it. There's nothing like having your kids surpass you. It's great. But one of the words that she wanted to challenge of mine was Peony. So it made me think of you. So I had to pop that up. And I also want to go back to this one from MJ, another one of our favorite chat family commenters. making this really, really incisive point about medical debt and credit. This is another just absolute banger of an issue for Democrats. I've said on this show before, and I'll say it again, I'm not from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. You know, y'all progressives are my friends, cousins. We're all part of the same team. I'm just not necessarily part of that branch of the family. But darn it all, Bernie Sanders was so right. The best idea of the entire 2020 cycle was the federal government just basically paying off everyone's medical debt. It would have cost very little money. It would have had a huge and very progressive impact on people's incomes and stress level and anxiety, and the impact on your credit and the impact on your bills and what you can afford, and the spiraling waterfall that happens when you're in medical debt, and then you have to pay off, you have to give up your car, which means you can't get to your job to pay your medical debt. And this is the kind of thing that is such an opportunity. And look, my guest 2 weeks ago, Ryan McConaughey, the former right-hand man for policy for Chuck Schumer, made this point that one of the things that Republicans neglected to do in their budget bill was to extend a tax credit, which goes to working people to help them afford insurance through the ACA, worth $7,000 per year per family. Mm-hmm. And that's a tax extender that is going to be up. It's one of those small things that maybe Republicans will get to. This morning in Politico, they were writing that Republicans recognize that, oh gosh, defending the ACA and extending this tax credit is something that they actually have to do if they want to stay in office. No. That's the defensive position that they've essentially forced themselves into, because inflation is going up, because prices are going up, and because healthcare is getting taken away. And so, oh wait, hold on. I'm usually just Amethyst. Oh, I see. Aha! All right. We are having an etymological explanation here from Amethyst Peony that I have up on the screen. So anyway, that is just a long, long way of saying I agree with you. And, look, Democrats, we've been having a bit of a hard time, right, getting some messaging clarity. I am all for what has been handed to us in this Epstein situation. I'm all for the schism that the Republicans and the MAGA right have forced on themselves because they are conspiracy theorists. And yes, I would love to continue to skewer them. It might have been Mark Gauci pointing out that Democrats plan to bring this up again and again in the House, make Republicans vote on it. Good. I'm all for that. And at the same time, I think what Schumer was trying to say, and I think what's the most important thing for Democrats, is that strategically, by deciding not to really legislate any further, what Trump is doing is he's forcing us to fight over what is on the table right now. And what is on the table right now is what? Tariffs and inflation, Medicaid, SNAP. It's the Republican budget bill. It's basic kitchen table economy issues. It's your bills. And that forces Democrats finally into some messaging clarity that is good turf for us. So, I mean, we couldn't have done a better job for ourselves. I think Trump is actually handing us a gift by making us communicate on the issues where we should be strongest.
I think that the real war on messaging from Trump is reality itself. Yeah. And we have to understand that he's going to always say the sunshine is a rain cloud and sort of things. We have to kind of push out there that that's not acceptable. And that's the case. I'll just say this for the Dems. Stop trying to be Republican light, because if I have a choice between a full flavored version or the light version, I'm going with the full flavored version. And the reality is the last 2 months of Kamala's campaign, it was just trying to be Republican light. And that's why they got trounced. Governor Walz, I have known him for a while. I saw him when he was the Minnesota 1st District guy. He was always a moderate Republican.
I remember him in the House. Very much so.
I asked him one day about food aid, and what came out of his mouth was the greatest answer on why you feed hungry people, particularly from farmers locally. And it still today stunned me. It was like, gosh, this was not a progressive. It wasn't pandering. It was just core base Democratic issues we win on. And when you look at the Pritzkers in Illinois and the Wallses right now, they might not be moderates. They could be an Obama, or they could be an Obama moderate. They're not necessarily Paul Wellstone on the left or a Bernie Sanders. But what they do is that they still are believing in the core values. In 2023, when the Democrats in Minnesota passed one of the most amazing series of bills with everything, progressive things, moderate things, Governor Walz signed off on every one of those bills outside of one. Every single one of them, he signed off on because that was what the Democrats do. He didn't sit there and say, I'm going to veto a third of these because I want to make the Republicans happy. I'm not going to say, what do the Republicans think? He's the Democrat. And if we realize that and realize our core issues of women's rights, LGBTQ rights, unions, good paying jobs, good schools, healthcare for all, if we remember those things and not try to soften those issues, because there might be some Republicans, some base that might think about, no, just go with the core. Because if you go with the core, that was the Tim Walz we fell in love with in August of last year. That is why we need to go back to that.
You know who agrees with you, by the way?
What's that?
A guy known as Barack Hussein Obama. They call him. I can't do Trump. I'm working on my Trump, and call him Barack Hussein Obama. Anyway, okay, we have enough of that in our lives. Yeah, he was at a donor event, and he said Democrats need to toughen up, and we need to stop being afraid of what we stand for. And I mean, look, Barack. Oh, I love you. I love you, Barack. I wish you would be a little bit more out front and center, being tough on our behalf. We need you, but hey, I'm with it. And look, to that end, this is just like one of these grab bag type things that pop up. New polling from Gallup over the weekend showing that despite the Trump administration's continued mass deportation campaign, Gallup shows record high support for immigration. 79% saying immigration is a good thing. The share of Americans wanting immigration reduced dropped from 55% in 2024 to 30% in the latest poll. And the point there is not to say that the Biden administration did a bang up job messaging wise on immigration. I mean, some of this is thermostatic, right? Some of it is that, this issue is less front and center. And, we're not in a campaign cycle, whatever it is. Some of it is thermostatic, but it also has to do with Trump overreaching. And it also has to do with, again, Republicans are handing Democrats a gift. Don't forget that Obama was responsible for more deportations than Trump. And we were on the cusp of a sane compromise on immigration. Mm-hmm. The point is, for all of the angst about Democrats not having our act together and being split and being in disarray on issues like immigration, we actually have a fairly coherent position, and it extends pretty well across more moderate Democrats and progressives. We just aren't really working toward it very well. We're not talking about it very well.
Well, and I got to get going here because I got to do some radio show today. So, but I will say this one final point. The Trump voters, all the people that voted for Trump, they voted for him to deal with immigration with a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel. These are people that are coming into our country to do the jobs that no one here wants to do. And they are more than welcome to do them. And my God, I think we should pay them a little bit more to scrub toilets and basically, to work in meat processing plants and go pick our crops. I think they should get paid more. They do a lot of things because, once again, all these people have left. And where are the white guys that were MAGA that were demanding those jobs? Oh, that's right. They don't want those jobs. The reality is people were dumb enough to vote for Trump, to use a sledgehammer on this issue as opposed to a scalpel. And now even a lot of his people are realizing, this needs a scalpel. And he's just grabbing a smaller sledgehammer and thinking that's going to work. But I do have to do a radio show. If I can post this. AM 950, Minneapolis, St. Paul, 3 to 5 in the afternoon, Central Time, USA. Chicago, WCPT, the progressive voice of Chicago. I am there at 9 p.m. at nights, and late night in Seattle, That is a kick in the old crotch, isn't it? Late night in Seattle, KKNW. I'm out there as well, so it's you can hear me there. I'm on Blue Sky, Matt McNeel Show on Blue Sky. Follow me there. That's the best place to follow me. And then, of course, as well, also it's Progressive Citizen X is the blog, and you can find things there.
And you've got the YouTube, all the information that you just recited is up on the screen. Screen grab it, people. Deal with it later. All right, Matt McNeel, I am going to close out the show in just a moment, but so you don't have to sit through it, I'm going to remove you. I'm booting you. Goodbye, my friend. I will see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been nice to talk with you. All my best. I hope you have a wonderful vacation, and I will talk to you soon, Matt, okay?
Thank you. All right. Matt is booted. I'm going to just close us out really quickly here. Look, thank you. It has been a pleasure to be with everyone. This is my vacation from my vacation. I do love being here with my family. Look, there's a foosball table in the back. Not that we ever use it, but like it is great. But I made it clear to the family that this was going to be a priority for me this week because it infuses me with so much energy. And I love hearing from each and every one of you. And I'm so glad that Matt helped us end on that positive note that we like to end on. And I think it's very real. I'm not suggesting that Democrats should go on offense on immigration. It's not our best issue. It's the go-to for Republicans. I'm just saying that polling is a great corrective to this fear that we've developed in our minds that, we're having an end run done around us by Trump and Republicans, that somehow we can't compete on these kinds of issues. Actually, people are not really thrilled with what Trump is doing. He's vastly underwater. Poll after poll comes in. I'm not going to bore you with more and more numbers, but poll after poll coming in showing that Trump is underwater on the economy, underwater on overall approval rating, underwater on immigration. And it's right in front of us. It's right in front of us. And they really are. Republicans are basically forcing us into messaging on the areas that we are strongest and where we have a real story to tell that is very real and very full of proof. And I don't know, it's kind of, I'm kind of excited as rough as this first 6 months have been. And as much as, by the way, I wanted to get to the rescissions package because it is so obnoxious, locking in the destruction of USAID. This is a conversation for another time, and it's taking us to another down note, which I don't like to end on. But I just want to put a bookmark in that we're going to return to that, because that is also something that I think the Republicans need to be held accountable for. Consider that. If this filters through to anyone on the Republican side, consider that. Consider that. You're going to have to be accountable in your own mind and your own conscience for what you do on this rescissions package, for what you do for foreign aid, for what you're inflicting on the world. But let me take us back to the positive, just to close us out. We really are, as difficult as the last 6 months have been, we really are now being forced into a position to compete on issues where Americans are with us, where we're strong, where we have a real story to tell. That means us standing up for our values, for healthcare, for food, for the kind of safety net that we think people should be provided, and the kind of opportunity that regular people should get, not like a government tilted toward the ultra wealthy. And so I'm excited about that. And I will finally close out by saying, this is going to be a joke, people. This is not real. But I have some video footage from my beach vacation, which I'm about to return to, and I would like to share it with you on the way out. So on that note, thank you to everyone in the chat family for weighing in today. Thank you for being here, for being with us. And here you go, my footage from my family vacation.
On vacation. On vacation. Got it on vacation.